Welcome to Inspired Men Talk, solution-focused therapists born in different decades who openly and honestly discuss their perspectives on the issues surrounding men's mental health and the things that stigma says we don't talk about.
As always, we have been joined today by Ben, Buck and Peter, who are ever present, and we have a fantastic guest with us today. With us today, we've got Dan Riley, an author from Santa Fe, I believe he says. He'll introduce himself properly later. His book is Seize Your Second Chance, and it's been making some waves from what I can understand, but it's not about promoting his book on this podcast. We're going to have a deep dive into the powerful story behind the book and what inspired Dan to write it. So let's get straight to it. Dan, welcome to the show. And please introduce yourself and give us a little insight into who you are and what your story is. And really listening, if you're enjoying these conversations, don't forget to hit subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform, so you'll never miss another episode. Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you to Peter and Ben as well for giving me this opportunity and inviting me along. My name is Dan. I'm 55 years old. I live in Santa Rosa, California in the United States, which is approximately 60 miles north of the Golden Gate Bridge in the San Francisco Bay Area. I currently am a volunteer and facilitator for the West Coast Esophageal Cancer Education Foundation support group. And I've lived in California for about the last 30 years. For the last 20, well, let me back up a second. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and my background. I'm married to my best friend. My wife and I have been together for about 2.5 years, but we've been together for about 14 years. And we're a blended family. We have 3 adult children between the ages of 21 and 26. I've worked in the retail banking industry for about the last 22 years, and I think that's kind of really where my story might start. I've also had an interest in health and fitness really starting at the age of 17, but then reconnecting with it again at age 48, following a series of 3 life-altering, traumatic events that I never saw coming. Reconnecting with my health and fitness became more than just a hobby. It was really a lifestyle change to reclaim control over my life, to build that resilience, and rediscover that part of myself that I feel like I've almost forgotten. A renewed sense of focus has become the cornerstone of my life, and it's now how I navigate through life. But it wasn't always. Thankfully, I did take some time to focus on myself and commit to healing long after I was faced with an esophageal cancer diagnosis. And that experience could have broken me, but instead it became a very powerful catalyst. So let me take a step back and share those 3 life-altering traumatic events that really put me on the path where I am now, and some of the insights that I gained along the way.
We were really excitedly looking forward to those. But one of the things which me straight away is you're going to tell us about 3 life-changing events. And we're all working in the industry of well-being and therapy. And most people have a single life-changing event. And that's generally enough for most lifetimes. So we're really intrigued to hear about 3 situations you've been through and still being able to write the book. So, we're really looking forward to that.
I'll tell you, I'm the type of person that I have a tendency to resist. I dig my heels in and I will push back until the weight becomes too heavy of a burden. And that is what happened in my case. As I mentioned, I have been in retail banking for about the last 22 years as a vice president. In September of 2017, one Saturday afternoon, about 15 minutes before closing, an intruder came in with the intent to rob the bank, in which case he did. I saw the person coming into the bank believing he was just another one of our clients. So I met him in the lobby of the bank where I briefly greeted him. He then pulled out what appeared to be a 9mm handgun out of a paper bag that he was carrying underneath his arm. And the distance between myself and him was less than 4 or 5 feet. And as he stretched out his arm, he had that gun pointed right at my chest. There's a picture. I think I sent you a picture, but in that picture, by the time that picture had been snapped, I'd already taken a step back. And so in that initial moment, when that was happening, life had a tendency to spindle, manifest into something that was superficial. It was not real, because things like that in life aren't real. They don't happen in life, right? So I thought. So my initial reaction when I first saw that was, I think my brothers are playing a prank on me. This wouldn't happen. And I really thought that was a prank for a split second, until I saw his eyes. Now, luckily, when I had approached him before he brandished the weapon, he had clothes and garments that were pushed up over his face and his nose. And I thought it was a bit unusual to be bundled up, having multiple layers of clothing on in early September. So when I approached him and greeted him, I then asked him to remove those garments from his face, in which case he did. He pulled them down from his nose, tucked them underneath his chin, had a brief conversation with me, and gave us all some instructions. Kind of happened like it does in the movies, where he said, everybody get down on the floor. This is a robbery. That really happened. But by the time he approached the teller window, he forgot to put his garments back up over his face. Luckily, because ultimately in the end, that's what got him caught. Fortunately, he was a career criminal, and he was only out for one thing, which was the money in the bank. So very traumatic event. I then had to work with law enforcement over the next several hours. That weekend, it was a Saturday, so that weekend, my wife had gone to visit family about 2 hours away, and I was the only one left in the house that weekend. So I went home, and by the time I got home, it was about 8 o'clock. I had stopped off at the corner store, and I picked up a couple bottles of wine, a couple packs of cigarettes, vats of ice cream and potato chips and all sorts of snacks and sugar. I went next door and I got a big extra large cheese pizza, which is my favorite, thin crust. And between 8 p.m. Saturday night and 4 a.m. Sunday morning, I consumed all of that. I never went to sleep. I didn't call anybody. I didn't text anybody. I sat in my house with the doors locked and the lights off, wondering if I was going to be safe. And so I fed that anxiety with all those things from the corner store that night. And that was really how I was kind of living my life up to that point anyway. It was a way that I buried and suppressed all those emotions throughout my life. My grandmother had bouts of depression as I was growing up, because my mother passed away when I was 6 months old, and my mother was an only child. And my grandmother, when my grandparents lost my mother at just before her 23rd birthday, life shifted for them. So I saw depression, anxiety up close in my earlier years. But this moment at the bank was a moment that I couldn't get out of my mind. I didn't know how to deal with, so I didn't. I left it alone. It was like a very heavy rock that I just stuffed in my backpack and continued on my journey. It was easy to ignore it, because if I ignored it and didn't talk about it and share it, it didn't exist, or it did become real to me. 3 weeks later, we had our first California wildfire in 50 years. Devastating. In the middle of the night, at about 1:30 in the morning, my wife and I and kids had to evacuate our house. Fire was just over the ridge, and it was a very, very windy October night. The fire was moving very quickly. But at 1:30 in the morning, you don't have a sense of seeing something like that. My wife was alerted and ran downstairs because neighbors were driving through the neighborhood, blaring their car horns. And we thought, because it was a holiday weekend, we thought it was just kids partying in the neighborhood. It turned out that it was concerned neighbors alerting us to evacuate. And so we had to evacuate for 11 days. And so we were out of the house, not knowing if the house existed and not knowing if everything that we owned had survived. But we did know that we were okay. So that was October of 2017. During the fires, while we had evacuated and living with our best friends, stores were closed. The world had shut down, to us anyway, because it was on fire. And this is even before the pandemic. So sheltering in place and N95 masks were really the first time that I heard that lingo, that terminology. And so we sheltered in place safely while the wildfires were burning. But one evening at dinner, I passed out. I nodded off. And my friend Greg, who's in the medical industry, had noticed that something was wrong. I thought it was just from stress. The stress of not knowing if everything that you value is safe. We didn't know if we were safe because we had to pick up and move multiple times. So I just thought it was the stress of being exhausted. He realized that I was having trouble breathing. And so a little after 9 p.m., he decided he was going to take me to urgent care to get me checked out. The problem was that there was no facilities available. Fires were burning. People were seriously hurt. I was embarrassed that I was even being considered to be looked after by doctors or nurses because I felt that there were so many other people that really needed their attention. Lo and behold, about midnight that night, we found a local regional hospital and they did some tests and it turned out that I had COPD. COPD wasn't just from all the things that I was inhaling, the toxins that were in the smoke and the air and the ash that had been falling during that period, but it was my lifestyle prior to that. I didn't take care of myself very well. About 6 months later, life was continuing to go on. The fires were now extinguished and we were looking to rebuild. Our community was looking to rebuild. Luckily, our house stood still, but there was a lot to recover from. So during that time, my wife was really concerned about the things that we had just gone through and my own health. And she was trying to encourage me to lose some weight, change my diet, be more active. And I had all these excuses. I said, how are we going to find time to be active and go to the gym and find a workout routine when we get home at 7 o'clock at night? We're so exhausted. We barely have enough energy to eat dinner before we go to bed. And she came back with, well, let's go in the morning. I said, I'm not a morning person. I can't get up that early. She said, well, we're going to figure it out, but we're going to do it together. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to eat healthier. Problem was we didn't know what eating healthy really meant. I mean, you see all these diet plans that are available and there's so much information out there that's actually even contradictory to each other that it was just overwhelming. It was overload. So I said, that's too much trouble. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I chose not to. She was very persistent. And so one week we decided we were going to eat fish and vegetables every night for dinner. That was going to be our diet plan, fish and vegetables. We didn't change how or what we ate throughout the rest of the day. We didn't meal plan in advance. We didn't do anything different other than fish and vegetables for a week. and I love fish and vegetables, but it got old really quick.
I
So
think,
that game plan was not
I
sustainable.
think, I think you just described most people's lifestyle. It's like, I want to get fit, but I can't do this and I can't do that. And oh, I don't do mornings or I don't do evenings. And every diet plan is, oh, but. So I think you're amongst, or then was amongst everybody else. Certainly me.
That was it. And at the time, I was, let's see, I was in my late 40s. So I was about 48 years old. I was not living a very healthy lifestyle, know how, and didn't have the time to learn. I was considered by my doctor morbidly obese, 35% body fat. I was 80 pounds heavier than I am now, and I had no intention of changing anything. I just looked at life as if it was a natural progression of what we go through. We're young, we have, we build some experience and gain some insights along the way. And then we get into our third chapter in life and things just happen. We just get older. My, my wife kept insisting that I could make different choices in life and map out a different plan. So with her encouragement, with the encouragement of our dear friends who housed us during the time of the fires, I decided to open up and listen to my inner circle. And my wife and I, we decided to join a gym. And my good friend, Greg, who is in the pharmaceutical industry, had been a fitness coach in the past. And so I did reach out to him for help, but I knew that he had resources that I could dive right into. And he had a friend, and his friend's name was Ace. And Ace is a professional bodybuilder, also a fitness coach and gym owner in the area. So I had an opportunity to meet Ace. And Ace and I, we talked for a little bit, and I really connected with Ace. There was something about Ace that drew me to his friendship, so to speak. And so he agreed to train me. And I spent 3 years with Ace every week. But I'll tell you that first 90 days, I only did it to appease my wife. I even told, because at the time I was drinking 2 bottles of wine with dinner every night. And that very first introduction, when I sat with Ace, and he said, "Well, let's see if we can get you down to 1 bottle a night." And I think that would be pretty good progress. And I thought, I'm actually working my way up to 3 bottles a night. We're going in the wrong direction, but let's see what happens, because I have no intent of continuing this on past 90 days. I was going to give it 90 days. I was hoping to lose 10 pounds, and then I was going to be done. And so that I could at least show my wife that I made the effort. As I started to work with Ace, I felt physically different. Having a very simple plan, 15 minutes of cardio, 4 to 5 exercises that I would perform in 3 sets became very doable. I don't want to say easy, because mentally there's so much that goes into committing to that. But the physical activity, as long as you show up, you're going to be successful. And so I started to physically feel different, noticed, and their acknowledgement and recognition gave me the inspiration and motivation to keep moving forward and keep working on myself. Ultimately, I ended up losing about 75 pounds over the course of about 18 to 24 months. And I felt good. I was eating healthy. I learned how to eat healthy. I come from a very large Irish Italian family, and those Italian food is America's comfort food, but it's not always healthy. And it's not always in portions that are really designed for individuals.
I think the biggest question I've got right now is, are you still just eating fish and vegetables? Is that how you did it? For 3, 4 years?
So I am still eating fish and vegetables, but now it's a little different. Now I'll share what I'm doing now. But the more that I worked on myself and the more that I worked with Ace, I felt good. So I realized that there's got to be something more. Once I lost all that weight and I started feeling good, I realized, you know what, maybe I can go out and help somebody else. So I started putting a coaching plan together to help other people like me who live a very busy lifestyle. I was going to coach and help them lose weight. And then I realized I had so much more work to do because every time I tried to tell my story, I started to break down and weep. I couldn't tell my story without becoming too emotional. And it wasn't because the story was sad. I felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude as of where the little bit of progress that I felt like I had made. And I had such passion to share that with other people. My own story became overwhelming. So I realized I had more work to do. This time it wasn't physical. This time it was mental. And so I reached out and consulted with a therapist. Wasn't the first time I've been to therapy. I've been to therapy in the past. I'm divorced. So our family went through family counseling, mediation. But this was really the first time I met with therapist for me. It was about me. In those other sessions, it was about family and group and dynamics. This time, it was just about me, which was incredibly uncomfortable, but incredibly exciting at the same time. Because I knew that I was in a safe environment, but the things that I felt like I probably needed to talk about, I never talked about openly out loud to anybody else other than my father.
How did your therapist approach that, Dan? Was that a question and answer kind of situation, or was it that they sat in silence and just listened? How did your therapy work?
Yeah. So, you know, they ask those open-ended questions, those discovery questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And so we started off that way. I started telling her a little bit about my background. She wanted to hear about my family dynamics. I shared that my mother had passed away when I was 6 months old, and the sense of emptiness that I had a tendency to carry around throughout life. She wanted to hear about the relationship that I have with my parents. I have very loving parents. I'm very grateful for them. And so when she asked those discovery questions, was really just tell me about you. And then we started diving into kind of each one of those sections of things that maybe I just never really acknowledged in the past. One of the things that she mentioned is every time I had a traumatic experience in my life, like seeing my grandmother suffer from anxiety and depression, actually having to be hospitalized because of it, going through electric shock therapy back in the 70s and 80s for it, the disconnect that I had with some family members growing up because of those dynamics.
Yep.
The end of my first marriage, and the trials that we went through then. So all these things in therapy we talked about, and each one of those, she said, was like a rock that I stuffed in my backpack of life, and I just continued on. And what we need to do now is we need to put that backpack down and we need to unpack it. We need to pull out each one of those heavy rocks that you've been carrying around, and we need to examine it. I told her that was too much. I don't know if I could do that.
But
She said, when we do that, when we bring it close to us, when we bring it forward, it becomes less scary. And after session, I believed her. I knew she was right. That's the reason why now I can talk about these things openly. One of the things I learned from her was how to journal. I'm a very poor writer. I'm a banker. Math and science make sense to me. So putting things down on paper was not something I was accustomed to. I didn't want to do it. She told me to go get a journal and start journaling I refused to even buy a journal because I didn't want to tell anybody I was journaling. So I bought a spiral ring notebook instead. I figured if I'm writing in a notebook, it's not the same thing as journaling.
Yeah.
And now I have stacks of spiral ring binders with notes. And what I did is cultivated those notes over the course of 4 years, and I put them in my book.
Wow. Okay.
Seize Your Second Chance. And the book is really about taking that next opportunity in life. And when you're presented at a crossroads, for me, I could either panic or I could change the course of my life. I chose to do something different. And it wasn't as easy as just saying it. It took work, and it took months of work. And the time that the bank robbery occurred, that was September 2017. Here we are in 2025. So it's only been now that I've been able to talk about this openly. And there's a lot of work that went into that. But journaling and writing those things down, what I did is I recorded the insights as I went through this journey, because that was the legacy that I wanted to leave to my children in case something happened to me. Through that journey, through the transformation that I went through after those 3 very traumatic events, unbeknownst to me, prepared me for an esophageal cancer diagnosis, which I just got in May of 2023. Stage 3 esophageal cancer, which is, I had about a 4-inch tumor, 10 centimeters. Now, to give you an idea, 10 centimeters, your esophagus is about 20 centimeters. So my tumor was half the size of my esophagus. But the work that I did, not knowing I was preparing for a cancer journey, the work that I did, according to my thoracic surgeons, and I had 2 of them, told me that's what saved my life. Losing the 75 pounds, changing my lifestyle to be more healthy and active, prepared my body to physically get ready for that surgery and that very harsh treatment that I went through for about 6 months. Today, I believe I have a very abundant life ahead of me. Thankfully, I took time to focus on myself and commit to healing prior to my diagnosis and reconnecting with my health fitness, because that's what's ultimately changed the course of my life, that saved my life. And now I'm in a position where I have so much energy that I'm like a wellspring wanting to bubble up and give back. And through that, it's not just about the book and the story that's in the book, about those 3 traumatic wake-up calls, about my transformation, about the esophageal cancer diagnosis and awareness that I'm trying to raise. But I have so much energy now that I'm looking to give back in ways that I never thought I could. I never thought I had the capacity to give back to. But honestly, what I really hope to keep doing is having more conversations like this, not just about raising awareness of cancer, but having more conversations, sharing stories like this, because I didn't come out unscathed. I didn't come out unharmed, but I did come out on the other end alive.
Yeah.
And I have my scars. And at this point now, what I'm really hoping is that I can share my story in hopes that it's going to help someone else.
Well, one of the things we set out to do from day one, and the reason we called it Inspired Ment, was we can't change everything all the time. But if one person who is struggling in any shape or form listens to you and how you've got through it, maybe lose some weight or have some resistance or resilience or whatever it is, and one person connect to that and change their forward momentum to a more positive track, that's the only reason we do that. And we can't do that alone. So we're very grateful that you shared that story. we're going to ask you some questions now. I don't know what the other guys do. We don't have any plans, as you always, as we tell everybody. But I'd like to maybe understand. Most people would fall over at any one of those. I've spoken to people who've been in those confrontational situations where that's changed their life and that's altered their life negatively. I've been talked to clients who have had lost everything through fire, famine, or flood, and they never really recover themselves. And as a cancer survivor myself, I see so many people who, once they've been in that situation, they're always sitting there waiting for it to come back, and they never live their life because they're still waiting. Which one of those things has led you to here, or was it a build up, or because you took action at the end, but would you have took action if you only had one?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if I would have taken action if I would have only had, because after the robbery, I took no action. In fact, I really didn't take any action after the 3 wake-up calls for 6 to 8 months, I think. I don't think I would have taken any action if it hadn't been for my inner circle of, of, of family and friends that were encouraging me because they saw something that I didn't. It was easy to ignore it. It was easy to allow that to just live in my head quietly, because as long as it stayed in my head, it didn't exist in real life. So I don't know. One of the things that I was inspired by to commit to was when I was writing the book, I realized that if something should happen to me at this point, and I lived through those nights where you can't sleep, dreadful thoughts of taking my last breath, and what is that moment gonna look like for me? I talk about that very candidly in the book. But if it wasn't for my cancer diagnosis, I don't know if I would have completed the book. And I think that I would have made some small lifestyle changes because of the way that it makes me feel physically. But I don't know if I would have had a purpose, a committed purpose. I'm very driven right now for the work that I'm now in life, which is bringing awareness to esophageal cancer, raising money for research, and really talking to the medical community as well as family members, patients, caregivers, and other survivors on a regular basis. That's the work I'm truly passionate about. So would I have gone through the transformation if it was just one incident? I'm not really sure. Would I be doing what I'm doing now if it was only for one of those? I'm not really sure. What I do know is that I didn't go from 0 to 60 quickly. I took baby steps because in the very beginning, it was easy to ignore and to do nothing, because going to 0 to 60 for me was, quite frankly, impossible. I knew I couldn't do that successfully. But one of the things that helped through ACE's fitness coaching, through the therapist's conversation and consulting, I also opened up it with my spiritual faith. I'm a Catholic growing up, so I went back and I sought spiritual counseling from our local priest. So when I put those things together, the physical transformation, the mental transformation work I did with the counselor, the spiritual transformation work I did with my local priest, and you put those things together, is what brought me here. And each one of them shared with me baby steps, how you could take small incremental steps to improve over time instead of trying to take big leaps and bounds, trying to start a health and fitness journey when you're, you're still not ready to do that. So running out tomorrow to do a 5-mile hike or 5-mile run when you've been living a sedentary life doesn't really work too well. Same thing with the journey that I went through. I had to take those small incremental steps. And I think that's what helped. And one of those things that put me and gave me the capacity to do that, starting to journal little by little. I started with writing on Post-it notebook pages, and then I transitioned those into spiral ring binders. And that helped. And continuing to talk to somebody.
How deep did you go on your journaling, Dan? Was it like, a quick bullet point, something that stuck in your mind for the day, or was it whatever your thoughts had popped up? Was it, there's lots of different variations of journaling. How deep did that go?
Yeah, it went pretty deep for a while. I purposely didn't write things down that were too deep because I didn't want anybody else to see them, much less myself. But sometimes I would have something that popped up and I would always write it down on a quick Post-it note. And then I would put it aside in my binder for later.
Okay.
Sometimes I would revisit that. If I had a thought driving down the road, or I do some of my best thinking in the shower first thing in the morning, or if somebody else told me a story that I connected with, I then took that I wrote down and I began to elaborate. And when they became 3 and 4 Post-it notes at a time, I then transitioned those to the journal and then started writing really just in bullet point form, not even in full on paragraphs and sentences, just to get it down on paper. And then sometimes I would go back and I would share that and get some input. But really it was, I had a thought, I wrote it down. If I didn't think about it again for a month or two, I kind of felt like I was done with that. If it was something that continued to surface, I dove into that a little bit more. And so some of those early childhood stories, I dove very deep into because those were things that I had not acknowledged earlier on. And I felt like I had a lot of work to catch up on to do that. Through my cancer diagnosis and treatment, I actually wrote in real time. So as I was going through it, I was writing. That was quite the different experience because I would go to treatment or I would go to a doctor's appointment. I would immediately come home and write down what just occurred. So I didn't want to lose that. I would go pretty deep.
And you talk about obviously you mentioned it in relation to your book, how to craft a legacy, how to build your resilience and improve your positive thinking and your mindset. How do you do that? What's your strategy for that?
At the moment that I thought I was going to die, that I was not going to be here for my children in my golden years, everything else in life became irrelevant. The things that bubbled up to the surface were a sense of feeling loved, a sense of peace, belonging, not feeling helpless, realizing that life challenges all of us in different ways, and we can embrace those challenges or we can resist against them. And when I resisted against them is when they became worse for me. So what I wanted to leave behind were those insights that I learned through life, that if my children were ever in a situation that was very stressful, caused a lot of anxiety, and they were at a crossroads, I wanted to put something down on paper, not just as my way of something that was endearing, of family stories to leave behind, but real, true lessons that they could take away and maybe use this as a playbook or as a guide. One of the things that I talk about in the book during the time that I was with or one of the therapists that I was with, I was really concerned because I thought I had PTSD from these events that I had been through, which originally inspired me or I don't know if it inspired me, maybe inspired my wife to continue to encourage me. But really what then gave me the capacity to be open was when I found post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is something that I came across as I was going through the counseling sessions with my therapist, because I wanted to know if I had PTSD, which she claimed that I didn't, but there was some resemblance of things that I had gone through that resembled PTSD. So I wanted to know what the opposite of PTSD was. And what I learned was the opposite of post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth. And Dr. Richard Tedeschi in North Carolina, and I believe in 1992 or 1993, him and his partner, Dr. Calhoun, had discovered post-traumatic growth. And when I found the 5 pillars of post-traumatic growth, I used that as my guide, as my roadmap for my transformation. That's what helped me. So I went from a period of high anxiety and high stress, not taking care of myself, not even understanding what self-care actually meant, specifically for men, then going through a transformation, a physical transformation of losing 75 pounds and feeling healthier, feeling the energy that I now have to give. The mental work came from not just working with my therapist, but have a better understanding of post-traumatic growth. And that left the roadmap. And the roadmap of those 5 pillars is what I used then as this guide. And pillar number 5 is deepened spiritual awaken. And basically what that really means to me is being able to have a better understanding of my emotional landscape. I was an angry kid growing up. I got into a lot of fights, but I think that was the way that I let that energy go. And now today it's different. I'm still eating fish and vegetables for dinner. Not every night, but it's definitely part of my well-balanced plan and lifestyle change. So through a healthy lifestyle, eating single ingredient foods, paying attention to healthy proteins and complex carbs and the right fruits and vegetables to eat, still journaling, having conversations like this, praying every morning. Those are the things that sustain me and allows me to that passionate work that I'm so committed to following through with.
Thank you. Dan, we're getting really near to the end now because we've already been going nearly an hour, 49 minutes. So I'm going to change it up a little bit and ask actually Peter, because what actually from that amazing story, what struck him? What,
Before I jump,
Peter, if you were to
Dan, thank you for your
take
story.
what you got from that,
It's an
and maybe a
amazing
tip
story.
for anybody
And thank you
listening
for it.
from that.
Incredible. I've had a traumatic incident, not a bank. I've been through a traumatic incident and did exactly the same thing. Went home and ate pizza, right? Did exactly the same thing. But in that story, I don't know if you recognize, for me, hero, because you were so calm when that guy walked in, you got him to drop. And that's what you caught him with. You know that story. And I love that. You acknowledged your wife, because coming through your story seems so important in everything that taught. And I think that was amazing as well. So yeah, that's kind of listening to it. That was kind of things that I took away. Love to question of you before I give my kind of a bit of a take, if that's all right, Gary. My question of you is this: you've obviously been through much, and we talk about our solutions in life, how we move forward. So what brings you joy now, and how do you keep connected to that every single day?
What brings me joy now is the passion that I have from this journey. I am a facilitator for Cancer Support Group. In fact, we just had our support group Zoom call last night. I get a chance to talk to people from around the world and hear their stories, offer some insights and hope. We have 2 thoracic surgeons on that call, so people can call in and ask doctors directly about their own experience. I'm also an executive committee member for the organization, and the work that we're doing throughout the country right now is I'm so connected with. And what I found is that the esophageal cancer community is actually a very small community. So I feel like I can actually truly make an impact by sharing my story, continuing to have conversations and talk about what matters most. And in my world, it's all about early detection. Early detection saves lives. And that is the message that I'm standing on my soapbox talking about through my megaphone. But I would also just like to say that talking to someone and my wife first, it was my wife and then my therapist to unpack that backpack for the life altering events that essentially cleared the way for the storm that I went through. So life is going to continue to throw us challenges. And when they come, we just want to be prepared for them. I believe that I have the capacity to take on that next challenge, whatever that may be. Hopefully it's not another cancer diagnosis, but if it is, I'm in a good place mentally and physically and spiritually to take on whatever I get thrown. And I'm sure to
I agree with you 100%, 'cause
record
you
that
talked
and share that with
about
my
are
kids in
amazing.
hopes
You
that I'll
took
be
that
able
step
to
there,
leave
amazing.
those insights
And that's a
behind
very
as
difficult
my
step
legacy.
for a lot of men to do. But once we do it, we know the benefits of it. But you talked about all of the things that we talk about to our client. Gary and Ben recognize it. The baby steps. Loved the fact that you said going to 60 miles an hour, it was too much. And it's very much what we talk about. And you take each individual step as it comes. So you are almost the poster for a solution-focused approach for changing everything. And I'm sure whatever comes up, you will definitely be able to manage it. Amazing. Sorry. Yeah, Gary, what was your question again? You're on mute, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've just rounded it up beautifully. So I think you've answered the question about what stuck out for you and what you'd say, and it was a great question. I'm going to move on to Ben because I'm trying to hurry us up a bit because we're nearly out of time. So Ben, what part of the story really resonated with you, and what tips would you give to anyone listening?
So I think I'm going to take the entire story because there's so much in there. And I think what comes out of that is a really important lesson that we often overlook those simple things, worthwhile lessons in life that are probably the smallest and overlooked part that actually teaches a really important and valuable lesson that, in to quote Wayne Dyers, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And if we focus on the positive element of it and we take it in a bite-sized chunk, doesn't matter what comes your way, you can overcome it. And more importantly, you can grow from it and become resilient on the other side. And okay, that's sometimes difficult to appreciate when you're in that moment. When you have just had your bank robbed, or you're running out your house in the early hours of the morning because there's a wildfire there. They're not the times that perhaps is going to always kick in and the reflection's going to occur. But if we take the time to reflect and look at it properly and look at what we can take away in the positive, we can build that growth and that ability to be resilient in the future.
Yeah, that's cool. So for me, what stuck out was, I mean, it's an amazing story, and you've been through so much and come through the other side so well. But actually, so much of it was done with others in mind. In fact, with others as the driving force. And interestingly, some of us are very self-led and almost selfish, but we're self-led. Other people, and I see myself this way a little bit, you're definitely this way. It's about appeasing or actually pleasing other people. What you do it for other people, because if it was just to do it for you, you probably wouldn't do so much. But to keep everybody else well or on track, then you'll do it. So you took up doing the exercise and the weight loss to appease your wife And then you realise, actually, I'm enjoying this. But you done it for someone else. And then it's like, without my peer group, my local group, my caring group of friends and family, that's what moved me forward. So some of us have got to recognise that we do things for other people rather than ourselves. And it's okay to do things for other people. It can still move us forward. And I think a lot of people think we've got to do it for ourselves. I've got to get up, got to do it for ourselves. Actually, it still works if we want to help other people or please other people, because we catch it and we get it. So, I think your story's great. And this podcast will resonate with so many different people in a slightly different way to many of the other podcasts we've done. So I really enjoy that. We're nearly out of time, Dan. So you've got 30 seconds to tell us about your book and how people can contact you on social media or any other way they want to get hold of you, what you can be got by. So
fantastic. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This has been exhilarating and inspiring, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to connect. You can see more information on www.danielpriley.com. There's some great resources there, not only about esophageal cancer, but also about the book. There's a universal link that you can click on, and you can actually even read the first 20 pages. There's a sneak peek. So if you're curious and you want to take a look at those first 20 pages. This has been so incredible. And the one thing that I will say, Gary, just to wrap up, is you're absolutely right. In the very beginning, I think I did it to appease other people. But then once I hit 60 miles an hour, I was on autopilot, and now they can't stop me. And that's what's so inspiring, because I really feel that this is so much bigger than me. Hopefully it's about making real change for all of us.
Well, thank you. And we're really pleased you got off the start line so you could get up to 60 miles an hour. So, guys, do you want to say a farewell?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Really inspiring story. Loved every minute of it. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
I'm
Dan.
sure
It was a fantastic
I'll spend a bit more
story.
time reading the
I'm
book
starting my
and getting to know
weight
a bit
journey
more about your
because
story.
You've inspired me a little bit.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Harder, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. You're so kind.
So that's it today, and for today's episode of Inspired Men Talk. Dan, thank you so much for sharing your journey and the story behind Seize Your Second Chance. Fab book. It's been truly inspiring to hear about your experiences and the lessons you've learned along the way. Certainly I've already started looking up, the 5 pillars. That's going to help. That's going to be great. Just so anybody listening who's tuned into this podcast, if today's conversation resonated with you, please share this episode with a friend who might need some inspiration right now. And don't forget to hit subscribe or to follow us on whatever podcast system you're using, so you'll never miss out on one of these powerful stories and practical insights. We'll be back soon with another incredible guest. Until then, take care and thank you, and keep moving forward. Look how far Dan can come. We can get up to 60 miles too. Thank you. Bye-bye.